6,005 people, that's the number that's been given by the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights as the number of people that were killed in March in Syria as a result of the deadly civil war going on there. As you mentioned, that's believed to be the highest death toll in 1 month since the conflict there erupted more than 2 years ago. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says that among these dead, that almost 300 of them are women, almost 300 of them are children, and over 2,000 of them are civilians, as you mentioned. These are absolutely shocking numbers. And as you also mentioned, the UN had estimated last month that over 70,000 people have been killed since the beginning of the conflict in Syria. It's believed that that's an underestimate, that in the long term that the number will be discovered to be a lot more. It's very difficult to report accurate numbers when it comes to casualties in Syria. Now, we spoke to Rami Abdurrahman. He's the head of the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. We asked him why he believed there was such a higher number of dead in March in Syria. He said he believed it was several factors, one of them being that there had been increased clashes between the rebels and the Syrian military in the past month. He said also there was a deadly suicide car bombing in Damascus just a couple of weeks ago. He believes that contributed to the higher number. And just the fact that there's been so much more shelling in and around Damascus and in places like Aleppo. The conflict has really been spiraling out of control. It's getting worse and worse every day. And this number that was released today really a sign of just how horrible and horrifying that war in Syria really is. Zain?
Mohammed, why is there no end in sight?
There's been no end in sight as far as, breaking this deadlock on the diplomatic front. You've seen several attempts by the Arab League, by the joint UN Arab League envoy, by other international bodies to try to get the Syrian regime and the Syrian opposition to negotiate some sort of solution. And despite all the talks, and despite the fact that the Syrian opposition has recently taken over the seat in the Arab League of Syria, none of that has helped. It's had no practical impact on the ground in Syria. You also have an opposition in Syria that is rife with divisions. The military doesn't seem to take command from the interim government that's been set up by the opposition. You have disparate military rebel brigades inside Syria fighting in different places. And you have a government, of course, that refuses to negotiate with what they call terrorists. They say they're going to continue to hunt down and kill terrorists. That's the term that Bashar al-Assad gives to the Syrian opposition rebel fighters. And you have a president, Bashar al-Assad in Syria, who remains entrenched and defiant, who refuses to step aside, refuses to heed calls by international bodies to stop the crackdown, the bloody crackdown that's been going on for over 2 years now. It's such a mess in Syria. There's no talking going on. Meanwhile, thousands upon thousands being slaughtered as a result of this war that goes on unabated.